What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and today, here we are talking about Pirate Rumble. Now, this is a video that a lot of people have been waiting to see for quite a long time, but you know, it's kind of weird to do this like every month, like a tier list video, because, you know, we can go months without the meta of PvP actually changing, which is why I don't do these videos that often. But considering, you know, there's not a lot of content out right now, and it has been a while since I've done a new one of these, we're going to be going ahead and distinguishing, in my opinion, what I think to be are the best teams in Pirate Rumble. And this is just purely looking at an offensive standpoint. Yeah, in terms of a defense team, there's lots of different options that you could go for. And personally speaking, I don't know what the best defense team is. You know, it literally could change from day to day. But in terms of offensive, that's a little bit more distinguished, and we can kind of identify which teams are the best offensively. So just because you see a team in this video that is really good offensively doesn't always mean it's going to translate directly to being a good defense team. And, you know, building a defense team is very difficult to kind of come up with, really, because you got to equate for not only being a good team that can defend against opponents, but also a team that can also bait people into trying to challenge your team. So it's a little bit difficult to juggle that. But with an offensive team, you can just jam pack it full of your best units and off you go. So in this video today, we're going to be going ahead and identifying what I think are the best teams in Pirate Rumble. Now, there actually aren't that many teams that I kind of thought were like the top tier of teams. Like, there's plenty of teams like the shooter team and stuff like that that are like not bad, but I don't think are the best options for offensive teams. But we're going to go over to the Rumble Pirate database. I'll leave a link to the description down below, and they've actually got a team builder for putting characters onto a team, and you can, it's actually a really cool application, and it's not complete. There are still characters that are actually missing from the Rumble database, but it's still a really cool way to showcase some of these teams for you guys, right? So let's go ahead over there, and this is the first team that I have for you guys. Now, this is probably the team that I think is like maybe the fourth best team in the game. So we've got the int team slash driven team, because there are lots of driven characters for this particular team. But it definitely is a highlighting with this new Gecko Moria, who is a fantastic unit, has a great special ability that says 100% chance to halve the stats of 3 enemies for 20 seconds. Now, that halving of stats is absurdly powerful if you partner it up with some other characters that do heavy damage, such as Doflamingo or such as Versus Big Mom. Being able to nerf their defense and health so significantly, and then just going ahead and whacking them with your specials, it's really powerful. But the other really good thing about the int slash driven team is that they're very good defensively as well. And you can see all these stats here: 19 HP, level 6 attack, 6 defense should I say, and then you've got a little bit of attack as well. And obviously as the timer goes on, you'll see that, you know, you do lose a lot of your buffs, but then you see Versus Big Mom, the later the actual battle goes, the stronger that Versus Big Mom will actually get. So in the late game, Versus Big Mom gets an attack boost, gets a CT increase so that she can launch her special very quickly, and it kind of revolves around having Big Mom on the bench. And then once the enemies have kind of launched all their specials and their potential passives have kind of expired, you can have Versus Big Mom enter the field and just absolutely go ham, especially if you've halved their stats with Mori's special ability. You've got Fujitora as well as a decent option, because he enables the huge health cut. Like, if you've got it maxed out, it's a 59% health cut to all enemies. It targets everyone no matter what for a 59% health cut. So if you're doing that, plus you have like halving stats and you do huge damage, like, there is potential for this team to actually wipe the floor with a lot of other teams. But of course, there are other teams that I think are a little bit more viable. Katakuri is also a fantastic unit because of his ability to debuff the enemies as well. So you've got a lot of debuffing going on, very tanky units, and have the ability, once you get your specials ready, to inflict pretty heavy damage output as well, especially with Fujitora, as we've already mentioned. Josu is just a nice addition to the team that helps out your int allies. And as we said, Versus Big Mom on the bench. NL is another solid option you can put on your main line, so long as you've got 6 characters or less on your crew in order for his passive to activate. And as we've already established, Blackbeard is also not a terrible option, but I feel he's a little bit outdated. His special doesn't do as much damage as what it usually would do normally back then in the day, when he was, you know, one of the highest tier characters in Pirate Rumble, because of so many characters increasing defense these days. Just Blackbeard just becomes a little bit less viable to use. But this is the first team that I have for you guys today that I think is probably one of the better teams in Pirate Rumble, but let's go ahead and move on to the next team. So this is the next team that I have for you guys today. Now, I think this team is still extremely solid, despite the fact that, you know, a lot of people are opting to use different teams these days, but I still think it's a really good team. Obviously, the Psy team, which we'll talk about in a moment, is a little bit better because it has a really good matchup against Slashers. Having Anel and also Rebecca, the Pirate Rumble unit, having great matchups against Slashers does hurt this team a lot, but outside of that, in terms of damage potential, this team will still beat a majority of other teams in the game. It's just that we've seen a little bit more powerful and more defensive style teams come through that, you know, will have a lot more going for them. But still, I think this team is really, really amazing and is still extremely fun and satisfying to use. Roger and Odin combination is phenomenal. We've already established that. Doflamingo helps out those slashes so much, adding those defensive style abilities to those slashes and also doing really good damage by himself. And you can see with these stats just across the board, this is level 1 base stats. Well, they're all maxed out, but this is saying from the jump of a match, like such high attack, high speed, high CT, you're launching your specials very quickly, especially with V3 lore, which I think is probably the best option. I think this core 5 is probably the main 5 units you should use for a slasher team. Having the such high increase of CT to your Psy slashers, so these characters are launching their specials very quickly, specifically Kizaru, which can help out your slasher teams even more every time he launches his special. And then for other characters, I mean, you got like Whitebeard, even though he's not a slasher, he still kind of helps out a lot, being on the bench, coming in, reducing defense, doing lots of damage to the enemy. He's self-sufficient as well. All of his buffs work for himself, so as you can see, as time expires, like he himself gives himself buffs, but you know, obviously as time expires, you know, you're losing a lot of these buffs from these characters, but the CT is still very, very high, so you're able to launch your specials very quickly, despite the fact that your buffs aren't as pronounced as what they once were. Remember, every time Dofi launches his special, he gives your crew defense buffs, like Kizaru gives you attack buffs, so you're still able to do things, even though some of the buffs may expire as the time goes on. And then even like Halloween Shanks is a pretty solid option because he's got really good ability to action bind enemies, which is nice. You could use Halloween Lore as well instead of like this lore because it enables you to get the special bind. And then you got this Pirate Rumble lore, who's also a pretty decent option, works well with your strength slashes. So you could use like Sweet Commanders, or you could use just with Odin, right? Like really good synergy with strength and slasher together. So that is also an option. But you know, obviously there are other teams that I think are slightly better, but still a very powerful team in Pirate Rumble. Okay, so moving on to the next team now. I think this is probably the second best team in the game right now, which is the Psy team. And I think, you know, probably if you go back maybe a month, maybe 2 months ago, this was hands down the best team in the game in Pirate Rumble. But having a look at this team right here, where obviously we want Enel on this team, we want Rebecca on this team. Both have really good passives for your Psy teams in general, both have really good specials, and then characters that we've seen before with Wano Law and also Roger, both of which are, well, Roger specifically being a rainbow captain, which helps out, but you've got this Law who increases the CT of your Psy characters. He's got a really good special, really good fixed damage, which is nice to see, but the CT increase is obviously one of the big things to enable your characters to launch their specials faster. So as time goes on, of course, you can see that, you know, until we get to like below 40 seconds, like your abilities in Rumble are looking really good. So this team will last for quite a long time. And then once you dip below those really low thresholds, like it doesn't really change your buffs that much at all, which is really good to see. Now, you might say, why is Kaido in this team? And the reason why Kaido's on this team is because if you took him out, Psy really lacks a little bit of damage. So Kaido is a really good choice to just inject into the team because obviously he's probably, actually in terms of offense, he's probably the best unit in Pirate Rumble. Just with his special, you can't really probably read it that well, but his special inflicts level 3 defense down. It will then do his damage 2 times his attack in a large range, so he targets a lot of enemies, and then a 50% chance to paralyze all enemies for 20 seconds. He just does so much stuff, and the fact is his passive just buffs himself by a lot and buffs Quick by a lot. And then you got Roger, which also can buff Kaido as well. So there's so much on this team that Kaido's just a perfect fit for it, honestly. And then as for other characters you could potentially run, Kalgara and Noland are okay, but the really bad thing about them is that they only target one character with their special, and their passive is self-sufficient, so they don't really give much to your other characters, unfortunately, but they are pretty good. You've also got Whitebeard. I think he's a great choice. You should pretty much put him on any bench, I feel. Just the fact that he reduces defense, then does his really good damage, has the potential to special bind powerhouse enemies as well, which a lot of good characters in the game are powerhouse. That's great. And then obviously Kizaru, he's actually another solid choice because you've got some other good slasher characters in here as well with the Roger and the Roger and the Law. You've got Rebecca here, who is also a shooter character, so Kizaru actually buffs Rebecca as well. Dude, if this Enel for some reason was also a shooter, like Kizaru would be a lock for this team, but Kizaru is not a terrible choice for this particular team as well, and obviously because he's Psy, he gets a lot of buffs from the other characters on this team. So I think this is hands down the second best team in the game, but I do think that there is one team in the game that is slightly better than this one. So in my opinion, the best team in the game is definitely the Quick team. And well, I guess at this point it's like Quick /Driven /Powerhouse. This team is ridiculous. Now, myself personally, I am unlucky enough not to own this Pirate Rumble Shiryu, but he is really good because for the first 30 seconds, your quick units get level 3 CT increase, so having him on the team, and then Tazora is another really solid option to give all of your crew members level 5 CT increase. So you got level 8 CT increase, well, level 8 for the first 30 seconds, then level 5 everywhere else, but then you've also got Magellan, which gives himself a level 2 buff to himself. So his CT is increased by a pretty substantial portion, and you see as time goes on, he's going to be ready, like pretty much after 20 seconds have passed, he's going to be ready to launch. And when he launches, he targets one of your other quick characters on your team, and he has a chance to grant them haste, which means that they go to the top of the order, which means that if they are ready to go as well, like either Kaido or Akainu, if they are ready to go, are able to go straight after Magellan and do so much damage towards them, because when Magellan launches within the first 40 seconds, he gives all enemies a total of level 6 defense down, and then if you have Kaido launch, he reduces their defense even further, then does his damage, or if you've got this Akainu, he does a 30% health cut and then does his damage. So just this in general, in terms of doing so much damage so quickly, like this is basically after 80 seconds have passed, right? Just after 80 seconds, these guys are ready to launch and do some serious damage towards the enemy. And then you got these guys as well. These guys are not slashers either. I mean, Tazora has the ability to buff your character's defenses. This guy and this guy and this guy all have amazing passives that buff your quick characters. I mean, look at these stats on your quick characters. I mean, specifically look at Kaido. Look at all those stats, right? And like these stats don't drop that much as time goes on. Like you've still got a huge damage potential, huge health, and pretty respectable defenses, I would say. And then CT is still relatively increased. Now, these are probably the 5 main units, at least these 4. These 4 units are probably the ones that you're going to be using. Tazora, you could probably replace with some of the other characters, right? You could have Bellamy, for example. Raid Bellamy is another option that I am using. He enables to reduce the defense even further to your enemies, and it also does a health cut. You've got this Ivankov is also an option to reduce the attack of enemies, and it's a really good attack down. It's a level 12 attack down to all the enemies that Ivankov hits, which is huge. You got Queen as well, who he's okay. Queen's not too bad. He has a really good passive though to give your quick characters additional health and defenses, but also definitely not a terrible special because it buffs his own attack and defense, and then he does damage in like a sideways range. It's not terrible damage. And then Whitebeard also, if you're running a quick team, Whitebeard has to be on this somewhere. Definitely on the bench is my recommended spot for him. But there's actually like a couple other characters you could potentially use. If you're not running too many legends, you could run like Legend Super Type Zoro, who is very similar to like versus Big Mom, or very similar to Sober Mask, which we will talk about, because I wanted to pull him up and talk about him because I haven't mentioned him at all. But don't sleep on this Pirate Rumble character, and you know, if you see this character on the bench, be very wary of it, because he has a really good ability which says that he gives like your quick characters a buff, and then he gives defense down to speed or quick enemies. So if you are coming up against it with a quick team, be very wary of that, because when there is 40 seconds or less, he does 2 times damage in a medium range, and then he'll also do an additional 2 times damage in a wide range. So he can do it to 4 times his attack when he launches his special. Very, very low CT for doing that as well. So just be wary if this is on the bench. This is a really good character, and even like you could chuck him on this team, even though you know he's not going to be receiving too many buffs. The fact that his passive will buff his own color, it will work quite fine. Just having him on the bench, he's going to do so much damage if he comes on with 40 seconds or less remaining. So him plus Whitebeard on the bench are really good low cost characters in Pirate Rumble that you can use to do a lot of damage very quickly. So in my opinion, this is without a doubt the best team in Pirate Rumble right now. Now, I don't really know when I'm going to be doing another one of these videos, but it probably will be a little bit longer from now. But I'm just hope you guys enjoyed this one and kind of got my perspective as where I see Pirate Rumble meta right now. And obviously, if there's any drastic changes, we'll probably make a video about that as well. But thank you very much to these guys that created the team builder for Pirate Rumble, and hopefully it gets updated as time goes on, because that Sobermask character was not actually on this particular team builder. So hopefully it gets updated with more characters as time goes on. But very, very useful resource, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video today. And if you guys did enjoy it, make sure you go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content that I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. But other than that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.